Have you ever, looked back at ancient history and just felt like something's missing, like there's a hidden story kind of tucked away in our oldest myths and texts?
Oh, absolutely. That
Yeah.
feeling that maybe the standard version of how humanity started, how civilization rose, maybe it's not the whole picture.
Exactly. What if there's this like profound truth just hiding there? Well, welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing another deep dive into exactly that kind of hidden current.
We really are. And today, we're not just skimming the surface. We're diving deep into a really provocative investigation, one that seriously challenges our basic beliefs. It's often called the Genesis 6 conspiracy. And our mission for you listening is basically to be your guides through this maze of really diverse source material. We're going to pull out some pretty startling bits of information, insights that really clash with the conventional views on history, religion,
Yeah.
even reality itself.
Yeah, this isn't your standard history lesson, folks. We're going to try and connect the dots between, Bible stories, ancient myths, actual historical accounts, and even modern secret societies. It's wild.
It really is. And what emerges, according to these sources, is this incredible struggle stretching back like 6,000 years. A struggle that, if you take these texts seriously, kind of reshapes everything we think we know about the past, and maybe even the present.
So the sources we're pulling from are pretty broad, right? We've got the Bible, Genesis, Job, Numbers, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jude, Peter. Lots of familiar names.
But also, maybe less familiar stuff. Apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch, that's a huge one for this topic, the Book of Giants, the Kebra-Nagast, Sirach, Wisdom.
And Gnostic Gospels, too.
Definitely. Stuff from the Nag Hammadi library like Origin of the World, Hypostasis of the Archons, plus historians like Josephus and Plutarch. And then you get into Masonic legends, Albert Mackey, the Anderson legend, the Oliverian theory.
Wow. And myths from all over.
All over. Greek, Sumerian, Egyptian, Celtic, Mayan, even insights from the Quran. The goal here is to, distill the key ideas from all of them, give you a balanced look at this, let's call it contrarian viewpoint, so you can be really well informed on what this perspective actually claims.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this mystery. Where do we even start with something this big?
Well, you have to start at the source, the voice that kicks this whole thing off, really. It's Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. It's short, kind of cryptic, and honestly, often just skipped over.
What does it say? Yeah.
It just says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown."
Okay, short, like you said. Nephilim, sons of God, heroes of old, men of renown. What's so explosive about that?
Well, it's what it doesn't say, almost as much as what it does. Genesis just drops it in there. No definition of Nephilim, no real context for who these sons of God are, and weirdly, it's placed right before the story of Noah's flood.
Yeah, that is kind of strange placement. Like, here are these weird giant heroes, now let's build an ark.
Exactly. It feels disconnected. Unless the author expected the reader to already know these beings were, like, catastrophically significant. The implication in the sources we're looking at is huge. The flood wasn't just about general human sin. It was a direct response to this event, this unnatural union and its offspring.
A cosmic reset button, basically, because of this genetic meddling.
That's the idea, a necessary reset because of this unprecedented perversion. So if it's that important, why so brief? To really get it, we need to understand what hero and men of renown meant back then. It's not what we think today.
Okay, so hero today is like a firefighter, someone brave, right?
Right, or maybe a superhero in fiction. But back then, Webster's New Format Dictionary, even one from 1986, defines the ancient meaning of hero as a man of superhuman powers, a demigod.
Whoa, okay, demigod, that's different.
Totally different. It shifts the whole meaning of Genesis 6.4. And some sources even suggest our modern obsession with Superman, Spider-Man, all that. Maybe it's a kind of cultural echo, a buried memory of an age when superhumans actually existed. There's this seductive, almost dangerous quality to this forgotten history, they argue.
So not just strong guys, but beings who were part god, part human, like figures from Greek myth walking into the Bible.
Precisely. Think about Homer's heroes in the Iliad and Odyssey. They weren't just warriors. They were often kings, demigods themselves, doing incredible, sometimes terrifying things, but also often flawed, often doomed, like Hercules, right? Immense power, but also tragedy.
Yeah. And the word hero itself, you said its roots mean like strong protector.
Yeah, strong guards protects. Definitely have those soldierly qualities baked in. But what's really compelling is how many ancient cultures, Teutonic, Celtic, Greek, they all talk about this distinct race of powerful, semi-divine heroes before the flood. They weren't just seen as exceptional humans, they were fundamentally different, a separate lineage.
So it wasn't just a Hebrew thing, it was a widespread belief.
Absolutely. Hesiod, the Greek poet, writing around the same time as Homer, maybe 900 BCE. In his Works and Days, he uses the exact phrase, men of great renown. It directly echoes Genesis 6.4, and he places this heroic age way back, near the beginning, right after the Trojan War era in his timeline.
And didn't he also write about the Titans?
He did, in his Theogony. He describes the birth of the gods and these giant, semi-divine titans, often called depotentiated gods, from an earlier age. It fits perfectly with this idea of euhemerism, that old theory from the philosopher Euhemerus back in the 3rd century BCE.
Remind me what euhemerism was again.
It's the idea that myths, especially Greek myths, aren't just fantasies. They're actually distorted memories of real historical events. Heroes whose stories got exaggerated over time.
Okay, I see. So Hesiod's Titans, Genesis's Nephilim. They could be different cultures remembering the same kind of beings.
That's exactly the connection these sources draw. And it's not just Greece. Look at Mesopotamia. Ancient clay tablets, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, they talk about a primeval age of heroes and who ruled these semi-divine Anunnaki giants.
Anunnaki, I've heard that name, often linked with, like, ancient astronaut theories.
Sometimes, yeah. But here, in these texts, they're described as these giant rulers. And fascinatingly, these Mesopotamian legends say they existed before the flood, and some even survived it.
Survived the flood? How? We'll have to get back to that.
Definitely. And Hesiod even mentions a mysterious fourth race of beings the gods created. Who were they? Was it the Nephilim? Was it another group of humans? Some sources speculate about people of day 6 from other texts, or even things like centaurs. It's unclear.
But the main point is, across the board Bible, Greek myths, Sumerian legends, there's this consistent story of a powerful superhuman race ruling over regular humans in the distant past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Author Susan Wise Bauer points out that the earliest figures in written history are almost always kings who are part man, part god, said to have come down from heaven on eagle's wings. It paints this picture of a dominant, non-human lineage.
Okay, so if we entertain this idea, these Nephilims weren't just tall. They were biologically different, demigods. What did they actually look like? Is there any description beyond just giants?
Well, yeah, the sources get pretty specific and pretty weird sometimes. So let's start with size. Goliath is the famous one, right?
Right. David and Goliath, big dude.
Big is an understatement. The texts say 6 cubits in a span. Depending on which cubit you use, the standard or the royal one, that puts him somewhere between 9'9" and maybe even 11'3".
11 feet tall.
Potentially. And he was likely one of the later, maybe diluted ones after the flood. Then there's King Og of Bashan. Remember him?
Vaguely. Another giant.
Huge. His bed was famous, made of iron, over 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. You don't need an iron bed that big unless you're enormous. Estimates put him between 9 and 13 feet tall, and incredibly heavy.
So heavy he needed iron furniture.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And these sources speculate if those were the post-flood remnants. Imagine the originals, the direct offspring. They must have been, as one source puts it, monsters in size.
But not just tall and skinny, right?
No, definitely not. They're described as bulked by muscle, gifted with strength. Estimates run from maybe 600 to 900 pounds of solid muscle. Think about King Og's bed again, 6 feet wide. That suggests a really broad build, maybe a 2-to-1 height-to-breadth ratio compared to a more typical human 3-to-1.
So incredibly strong, built like tanks.
And fast, too, apparently. Fleet of foot, known for quickness, dexterity. Feared warriors, obviously. They could wear armor that would crush a normal man. Some accounts say it took a whole team of servants just to carry their gear.
Okay, that definitely fits the heroes of old, men of renown description.
Terrifying renown.
But it gets stranger, the mutations. Some are explicitly said to have had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot.
Like polydactyly. That's a real genetic thing. It is. But here, it's presented as a specific trait of these giants. And get this, Josephus, the 1st century historian, he confirms this detail. Extra digits. Imagine the size of those hands and feet already, then add extra fingers and toes. Pretty intimidating.
Josephus is usually considered pretty reliable, isn't he?
Generally, yes, for his time. And he goes further. He said their faces, their countenances, were entirely unique, totally different from normal human anatomy. He described them as terrible to the sight and even fearsome to the hearing, suggesting booming, unnatural voices.
Wow. And didn't you mention something about their
Yeah,
bones?
this is maybe the most startling claim from Josephus. He said their actual bone structure was different, which, I mean, makes sense if you have to support that kind of size and weight. But he also claimed their bones were kept on public display in Judea until around 70 CE.
Seriously, giant bones on display.
That's what he wrote. People could supposedly go and see them. And there are other accounts, too, of living giants being viewed in Rome around that time, like Posio and Secondilia, said to be over 10 feet tall.
Is there any modern evidence, like archaeological finds?
Well, that's controversial, obviously. Mainstream archaeology is generally skeptical. But some researchers, like Charles Missler, insisted there was archaeological evidence, oversized skeletons found in Palestine, that confirmed these tribes of giants. Egyptian monuments also depict these tall, often fair-skinned enemies, the Anakim and Rephaim, sometimes with features that look, well, a bit non-human.
Okay, non-human features. What are we talking about?
This is where it connects back to their parentage, the sons of God, who the sources identify as fallen angels, specifically watchers. These watchers are often described with serpent-like features. Think face of a viper.
Serpent-like angels, like the seraphim in Isaiah.
Exactly. Seraphim means fiery ones or serpents. And remember, Satan took the form as a serpent, a seraph, in Eden. Some Gnostic texts, like The Origin of the World, get really specific, describing these angel beings. Long and narrow faces, prominent cheekbones, elongated jawbones, thin lips, and slanted eyes. Sound familiar?
Kind of sounds like, well, modern descriptions of certain types of aliens, actually.
The resemblance is noted in the sources, yeah. And the Nephilim, their offspring, supposedly look just like their fathers. This viper look.
Is there any physical evidence for that, like weird skulls?
Interestingly, yes. There are those elongated skulls found in various parts of the world, including Sumer and Egypt, dating back thousands of years. And think about ancient iconography. The cobra was the symbol of kingship in Egypt for millennia. Serpent motifs are everywhere in ancient art. Egypt, Central America, Canaan, beings with long necks, cobra-like heads.
Even Sumerian goddesses.
Yep, the goddess Nikusag was called the Serpent Lady. The Anunnaki giants were sometimes called princes and splendid serpents. It's a really pervasive theme. Even the earlier Ubaid culture in Mesopotamia depicted their gods with reptilian features.
Okay, that's unsettlingly consistent. What else? Any other weird physical traits?
Eyes and skin. Some descriptions mention glowing eyes, solid gold or honey-colored, and skin that was white and rough. Researcher Frank Joseph describes Atlantean giants supposedly related as having ruddy white skin with blonde and red hair and glowing eyes.
Glowing eyes. Like bioluminescent.
It sounds like it. Similar descriptions exist for the Tuatha De Danann and Celtic myth, the shining gods, and other fairy folk traditions. They're often described as lucent.
This is sounding less like just big humans and more like something else entirely.
Right, and the story of Noah's birth in some of these texts really drives that home. Apparently, when Noah was born, his appearance was so startling, skin white as snow, hair white as wool, eyes glowing, that his own father, Lamech, freaked out.
Freaked out. Why?
He thought Noah was a Nephilim. He apparently ran to his father Methuselah in terror, saying this baby wasn't human, he looked like the children of the angels of heaven. His form was different and not like us.
His own father thought he was an alien baby, basically.
Essentially, yeah. It shows just how distinct and frankly terrifying the Nephilim appearance must have been, if even a newborn exhibiting some similar traits caused that much fear.
Okay, so their physical presence was huge, imposing, maybe even alien, but their impact wasn't just physical, was it? You mentioned knowledge, sciences.
Exactly. This ties into the whole idea of a pre-flood civilization that had access to incredible knowledge. The sources talk about the 7 sacred sciences, knowledge of unimaginable worth supposedly given to Adam by God right back in Eden, secrets of the universe, even how to control it, if used correctly.
The 7 sacred sciences. What were they?
The Dowlin manuscript, which is linked to Masonic lore, lists them. Grammar, rhetoric, dialectic, which is like logic or debate. Arithmetic, geometry, and geometry is explicitly called Masonry here. That's key music and astronomy.
Some of those sound familiar from Genesis, don't they? Lamech's kids, Jubal with music, Tubal Cain with metalworking, which involves geometry and maybe arithmetic.
Good catch. Yes, there's a connection drawn there. And these weren't just human inventions, according to some theories, Hutchinsonian, Anderson, Oliverian, all important in Masonic history. They claim Adam got this knowledge directly from God. They even point to verses like Genesis 1.28, fill the earth and subdue it. Or God's comment at Babel in Genesis 11.6, nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. as hints of this original, powerful, divinely given knowledge.
Oh, okay, so Adam had this amazing knowledge. What happened to it?
This is where the conspiracy really kicks in, the Great Schism. Adam supposedly passed this knowledge down to both his key sons, Cain and Seth. And they went in wildly different directions with it.
Seth's line was the good one.
Right. Seth's descendants, the pure branch, supposedly used the sciences, especially astronomy, for good understanding seasons, agriculture, aligning with God's order. They were the sons of light, righteous for generations. Josephus says they were virtuous, studied the heavens. Noah was supposedly the last keeper of this pure knowledge before the flood wiped the slate clean.
And Cain's line.
The spurious branch. Cain, called a hater of the true God in one legend, took these same sciences and twisted them, corrupted them for impious agendas. He used geometry and masonry not just to build, but to build fortified cities, like Anunnaki. Josephus says he introduced weights and measures, often seen as a step towards materialism and away from divine reliance. Both Josephus and Ginsburg label Cain the father of evil, violence, corruption, a transgenerational wickedness.
Genesis doesn't detail all that about Cain's descendants, though, does it?
No, Genesis is pretty sparse on Cain's later line, but these other sources fill in the gaps, painting a picture of escalating degeneracy. Josephus said Cain's posterity became despicable, violent robbers. By the sixth generation, they were supposedly a human cesspool, primed for evil. This context, combined with the later Nephilim intervention, helps explain why the world was so corrupt by Noah's time that God decided on the flood.
Okay, so two branches of knowledge, and this leads to the two Enochs. That always confused me.
Yeah, it's confusing because the names are the same. You have Enoch the righteous from Seth's line. He's the famous one in Genesis 5 who walked with God, was taken, raptured. He represents the pure knowledge, the connection to the divine.
Okay. And the other Enoch.
Enoch the evil from Cain's line. This Enoch, according to Masonic legends and other sources, is claimed as the first master mason. He's credited with inventing writing hieroglyphics specifically to keep secrets, create sacred symbols, record his knowledge in books. He supposedly amassed secrets of the most mysterious sciences. The Book of Enoch even says he was tutored in the 7 sciences by the Watchers, those fallen angels.
So he got knowledge from the fallen angels, and he corrupted the pure sciences.
That's the claim. He took astronomy and twisted it into astrology, sun worship, introduced pagan rituals, secret ceremonies. He's linked to the zodiac, lived 365 years a solar year, right? This knowledge was deliberately cloaked in mysteries, passed only to initiates. His name, Enoch, even means initiated or consecrated. Kind of ironic, or maybe telling.
And Freemasonry claims this Enoch, the evil one, as their founder, not the righteous one.
According to these sources, yes. Specifically, authors Knight and Lomas argued this was a deliberate move by early Masons to hide, except from the adepts, their acknowledged connections to the transgressions of Cain and his descendants. It gave them a respectable veneer, a false veil of legitimacy, while secretly aligning with the corrupted knowledge lineage. Apparently, Dr. Oliver, a Masonic historian, got in trouble for pointing out the link between Masonry and Cain's line too openly.
Wow, so this corrupted knowledge kept going down Cain's line.
And it had a major resurgence with Lamech, Cain's descendant in the 7th generation, and his kids Jabal, Jubal, Tubal, Cain, and the daughter Nama. They weren't just skilled inventors. The sources call them infamous curators of evil, actively pushing this forbidden knowledge.
And they're the ones who built the pillars.
That's the legend. To make sure their heretical doctrines, their corrupted sciences, would survive the coming flood. One pillar of marble, supposedly with directions to 9 hidden vaults containing Enoch's secrets, and another of brick or brass, inscribed with the 7 spurious sciences and hieroglyphs. They wanted this knowledge, plus additional secrets they supposedly got directly from the fallen angels to reach the post-flood world.
So the conspiracy could continue.
Precisely. And here's where it gets really intense, the convergence point. Lamech's daughter, Nama. She supposedly married one of the Anunnaki, a Nephilim named Shamdon.
Married a giant, a demigod.
An unholy union, yes. And from that union came another giant, Asmodeus, a figure often associated with demons in later lore. The sources explicitly call this marriage and its offspring a culmination and inner circle for the foundation of the Genesis 6 conspiracy. It's not just about knowledge anymore. It's about a physical lineage forged through forbidden unions and forbidden secrets.
Okay, this is really starting to sound like a full-blown conspiracy. It all hinges on those sons of God being angels, though, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If they were just human descendants of Seth marrying Cain's line, the whole supernatural element collapses. The mainstream view often does say they were just Sethites, but the sources we're looking at argue that's just an assumption, supposition, not fact, and the Bible itself doesn't actually support it.
So what does the Bible support, according to them?
Direct annotations and related scriptures. For instance, the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 6, and chapter 2, verse 1, talks about the sons of God presenting themselves before the Lord and Satan coming with them. The NIV footnote for those verses explicitly says sons of God means angels.
Okay, that's pretty direct.
In Deuteronomy 32.8, there's a textual variant there. While many modern translations say God set boundaries according to the number of the sons of Israel, the older Septuagint translation and some Dead Sea Scrolls fragments read according to the number of the sons of God, or angels of God.
Interesting. So other gods or angels overseeing nations.
That's the implication, yeah. Beyond specific verses, major reference works like Unger's Bible Dictionary, Nelson's, and collections like the Other Bible all state clearly that the Genesis 6 sons of God were angels who sinned with human women and produced giants.
Was this view common in the past?
Very common, apparently. A Byzantine monk, George Syncellus, writing around 800 CE, flat out equated the Watchers or Grigori-specific ranks of angels with the Genesis 6 sons of God who fathered giants. The Book of Enoch itself, considered scripture by some early Christians and Ethiopians, is all about this. Josephus again confirms that iniquitous angels did indeed couple with daughters of men. It wasn't some secret, it was just maybe uncomfortable, so it got shelved by modern Christianity, as one source puts it.
Okay, the other texts too.
Loads. The Encyclopedia Americana acknowledges that history, both sacred and profane, mentions giants. The Enochic Book of Giants, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, explicitly calls giants the offspring of fallen angels. The main Book of Enoch says 200 angels led by Shemiaza and Azazel descended on Mount Hermon, swore an oath, took human wives, and fathered these giants described as being not of the spirit, but of the flesh. The second Book of Enoch calls them Grigori, giant fallen angels, who took wives simply because they were beautiful, purely out of lust.
Right, but the big objection is always, can angels even do that? Matthew 22.30 says angels in heaven don't marry.
That's the go-to verse, yeah. But the counter-argument is pretty strong. First, Genesis 6 itself describes it happening, regardless of heavenly marital status. Second, 1 Corinthians 11, verses 6 to 10, where Paul talks about women needing authority on their heads because of the angels.
I've always wondered about that verse.
The early church father Tertullian interpreted it as Paul telling women to wear veils specifically so they wouldn't entice fallen angels. The argument is, okay, maybe they don't marry in heaven, but that doesn't mean they lack the capability to interact physically or sexually outside of heaven, especially if they rebelled.
So capability versus prohibition.
Exactly. The Book of Enoch even has God telling the angels they were meant to be spiritual and immortal, so he didn't give them wives like humans need for procreation because heaven is your proper dwelling place. It implies the potential was there, but it was forbidden.
And some traditions go even further.
Oh yeah. Kabbalistic texts like the Zohar and scholars like Ginsburg claim angels can actually transform themselves into physical male or female forms specifically to mate with humans. The Testament of Reuben, another ancient text, says the Watchers transformed into human males to appear to women, leading to the giants. It wasn't just spiritual influence, it was physical transformation and intercourse.
That's graphic.
It is. And the Apostle Jude, in his short letter, makes a powerful link. Jude 1.6-7 connects the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling directly to sexual immorality and perversion, comparing their sin to Sodom and Gomorrah. These sources argue that verse, heavily influenced by Enochian tradition, makes it undeniable. Angels had sexual capabilities, and using them was a profound transgression.
And the consequences for the women involved.
Horrific, according to some texts. The Kebra Nagast, that Ethiopian holy book, says the human women carrying Nephilim often couldn't give birth naturally. Some died, others had the giants literally tear their way out, splitting open the bellies of their mothers. One source flatly states, all the originating Nephilim mothers died. Their bodies just couldn't handle these monstrous offspring.
Good grief. That's horrifying.
It paints a picture of extreme biological violation. And again, this idea of God-human hybrids isn't unique to Hebrew texts. Egyptologists like Schwaller de Lubic's, astronomers like Horberger, they believed humanity devolved from giants or interacted with them. Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Mesopotamian myths are full of heroes and demigods born from gods mating with humans. Theseus, Hercules, Perseus often depicted fighting monsters like dragons.
Dragon slayers? Any connection there?
Possibly, given the serpent imagery associated with the Watchers. And interestingly, Poseidon, The Greek sea god supposedly fathered giant twins who ruled Atlantis that lost civilization. Some sources claim Freemasons want to rebuild.
Okay, so this illicit breeding program gets underway. What was God's response, besides the eventual flood?
An immediate intervention, according to Genesis 6.3, God declared he wouldn't contend with humanity forever, limiting lifespans to 120 years. This applied even to the Nephilim, sources say, confirmed also in the Quran. It was a direct check on this perversion to the natural order.
And what happened to the Nephilim spirits when they eventually died, especially in the flood?
This is a really crucial and dark part of the conspiracy theory, drawn heavily from Enoch. When the giants died physically, their spirits, being immortal due to their angelic parentage, didn't just disappear. They couldn't go to heaven. They became evil spirits on earth, what we now call demons.
So demons are Nephilim ghosts.
That's the claim. Roaming, disembodied spirits trapped on earth, unable to enter heaven until the final judgment. Taoist traditions apparently called them vagabond ghost gods. Greek ideas about hero cults, worshipping the spirits of dead heroes who lived a shadowy life underground but still influenced the living, might echo this. These spirits were seen as prideful, enraged at their fate, and now unleashed.
And they're actively hostile.
According to Enoch's prophecy, absolutely. The spirits of the giants will afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth and cause trouble. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. It suggests this ongoing, invisible war being waged by these angry, disembodied spirits against humanity.
Wow. Okay, so these Nephilim weren't just big brutes. They became rulers.
Yes, that's a key point. They didn't just wander the wilderness. They quickly rose to power, became leaders of the ancient peoples, the princes and kings, mighty warriors, powerful potentates. Their sheer size, strength, and probably their otherworldly presence gave them an advantage. They obtained absolute power through tyranny, the sources say.
Tyrants, not just heroes.
Definitely tyrants. Described as proud and arrogant, unjust leaders, despisers of all that was good. The Book of Sirach accuses them of rebellion against God, introducing heresies and blasphemies through tyranny and intimidation. The Book of Wisdom talks about a father, interpreted as a Nephilim ruler, introducing idol worship, complete with secret rituals and ceremonies under powerful rulers, making paganism the state religion.
And Sumerian records confirm giants introducing kingship?
Remarkably, yes. The Anunnaki giants are credited in Sumerian texts with establishing kingship on Earth, appointing human rulers under them. A new world order, basically, imposed by these beings.
And this led to total corruption.
Utter corruption. Unger's dictionary says the Nephilim race became exceedingly wicked and violent. Their thoughts, continuous evil, all fueled by the influence of watchers like Shemyaza. It perfectly matches Genesis 6.5. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness had become, and that every inclination of his heart was only evil all the time. This unnatural union, this violation of God's created order, caused such a shocking abnormality, a cosmic imbalance, that the flood became necessary.
Enter Noah. Why was he chosen? Just because he was righteous?
Righteousness was key, his loyalty to God. But critically, the sources emphasize the purity of his Adamite lineage. He was supposedly untainted by Cainite blood, untainted by these other pre-Adamic day 6 people, some texts mention, and crucially, untainted by Nephilim genetics.
So God gave him time to build the ark and warn people.
Yeah, that 120-year period mentioned earlier is often interpreted as the time Noah had to build and preach repentance. But nobody listened. The Nephilim and the corrupted humans just laughed at him, called him a madman, a liar. They threatened to stone him.
So he and his family were outcasts.
Totally. They had to flee for safety. The giants, meanwhile, were described as inherently hostile, destined to afflict, oppress, destroy, attack. Baruch even says they lacked true understanding, their evil sourced directly from their fallen angel fathers.
And then there's the blood drinking. That sounds particularly grim.
It really is. The Book of Enoch explicitly accuses the Nephilim of starting to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Researcher Lawrence Gardner suggests they did it for longevity, trying to absorb life force. Jewish legends say it began when they turned against humanity, a complete rejection of God's laws.
Which is why blood consumption is so strictly forbidden in the Bible. Leviticus, Genesis 9 after the flood.
Exactly. Even in the New Testament, the Council in Acts tells Gentile believers to abstain from blood. The Quran forbids it too. It's a fundamental prohibition. And these sources connect this Nephilim practice directly to things like ancient dragon court rituals, starfire, divine menstruum terms linked to esoteric traditions, vampire lore, and allegedly ongoing secret practices today. Jewish legends even claim humanity took up blood drinking again at Babel. It's a recurring theme of rebellion.
So the flood was the ultimate judgment on all this.
The terrible punishment for the cosmic imbalance caused by the angels and Nephilim. And it wasn't just rain. Genesis mentions the springs of the deep bursting open, the floodgates of the heavens. Enoch and the Quran add details like fire, naphtha, and brimstone. It sounds more like the descriptions of Atlantis' destruction. Flood, fire, volcanoes, earthquakes, a total cataclysm.
And the Nephilim weren't just victims of the flood, they were the cause.
That's a crucial point in these sources. Their rebellion, their state-sponsored mysticism and corruption, necessitated the flood. And here's that really controversial idea again. Maybe not all of them died. The sources float the possibility that some Nephilim, along with other rebellious refugees, survived. Maybe in safe havens not on the face of the earth. Maybe in other arks provided by the fallen angels.
Which would mean Noah wasn't the only survivor.
It opens that door. Maybe other human groups, these people of day 6, also survived. It completely changes the post-flood picture and allows the conspiracy to just pick right back up.
Okay, if that's true, how did the knowledge, the corrupted science, survive those pillars?
The pillars of Lamech, exactly. The brass one with the spurious sciences, the marble one with directions to Enoch's hidden vaults. They were designed to survive, and according to legend, they did.
And someone found them.
Enter Hermes, also known as Thoth in Egypt, Mercury to the Romans, Idris in the Quran. He's identified as the one who found and translated Lamech's pillars after the flood, probably near Babel.
Hermes Trismegistus. Great.
That's him. He then supposedly taught this rediscovered antediluvian knowledge to Nimrod and his followers, the Chaldeans. This infusion of ancient, corrupted wisdom is credited with the sudden, explosive rise of Egyptian civilization. Hermes is linked to inventing writing, authoring tens of thousands of books, founding Egyptian religion. He's the bridge.
Nimrod, he comes up a lot. Mighty hunter before the Lord, but also connected to Babel.
Right. Described as a Gibberum, mighty warrior, potentate echoing the pre-flood men of renown. Masonic legends, York Anderson, actually credit Nimrod with establishing the first constitution for the renewed post-Diluvian mysticism. He wasn't just a king. He was the organizer, the enforcer of the revived conspiracy.
And the Chaldeans were his priests, basically.
His magi, his wise men, astrologers. They became the keepers and propagators of these corrupted sciences. From Babylon and Assyria, the knowledge spread to Egypt, likely via Mizraim, Ham's son, and Hermes, then on to the Greeks, Romans, Druids, everywhere.
So all pagan religions stem from this one corrupted source.
That's the claim in these texts. All pantheistic religions, they argue, grew out of this spurious masonry, all based on similar sun god allegories, tracing back to Enoch the evil's original perversions. It's a unified field theory of paganism rooted in this conspiracy.
And this connects directly to secret societies like the Freemasons.
Directly. Dr. Oliver, himself a Mason, called modern Freemasonry a relic of idolatrous mysteries, rooted in paganism, polluted with idolatry. Scholars cited trace Masonic rituals back to ancient pagan initiation ceremonies.
Secrecy is key then.
Absolutely essential. Mysticism is secret worship.
Yeah.
Secret rituals, secret ceremonies, known only to initiates. And they're layers of deception.
Layers.
Yeah. The lesser mysteries are for the public, the outer ranks, full of allegories, symbols, stories that seem okay on the surface. But the greater mysteries, the real secrets, are hidden, revealed only at the highest levels, like the 33rd degree in some Masonic rites. That's where the secret of secrets, the true, often shocking nature of their beliefs and origins, is supposedly unveiled.
How do they hide it so well?
Through techniques like legomanism. It's an old occult practice of encoding hidden meanings within seemingly normal text or symbols. Think of the layers in Grail legends, Da Vinci's paintings, Masonic symbols everywhere. It's designed so only the initiated can decode the real message, keeping the mundane masses in the dark.
And the core belief hidden is pantheism.
Pantheism is central. Unlike monotheism, it denies a personal God. Instead, God is seen as this impersonal, universal life force, an energy in everything, which means other gods, spirits, even initiates themselves, can be seen as part of or equal to this God force.
Like the jinn in the Quran, being set up as rivals to God.
Exactly. The Quran describes jinn as made from smokeless fire before Adam. Satan, or Iblis, is called a jinn who refused to bow to Adam and now actively deceives humans. It fits this pattern of non-human entities vying for power and misleading humanity.
And this ties into reincarnation, achieving godhood.
Yes. The goal for the initiate isn't just heaven, it's achieving personal godhood, becoming immortal, joining the pantheon. The Egyptian myth of Osiris dying and becoming an immortal god is seen as an allegory for this process. Masonic degrees, for example, are sometimes interpreted as stages of this spiritual evolution culminating in perfection and the revelation of all mysteries in the highest degrees, promising ultimate power and self-deification.
So astrology is just one example of a corrupted science used for this.
A prime example, taking the legitimate study of stars, astronomy, and twisting it to claim heavenly bodies control human fate, implying pagan gods or cosmic forces rule history, not the true God. Isaiah critiques Babylonian astrologers for this very reason. Enoch the Evil is blamed for inventing the zodiac and star worship rituals, turning science into a tool for paganism and control.
Okay, fast forward to today. How does this ancient conspiracy supposedly manifest now?
The sources argue that modern Freemasonry, Theosophy, various Gnostic revivals, New Age beliefs, they aren't separate things. They're all contemporary purveyors of the antediluvian seditions, direct continuations of the same ancient forbidden knowledge.
And this connects to things like the New World Order.
That's the endgame described, an unholy convergence between these secret societies with their ancient agendas and secular global power structures. The goal, a one-world government.
Controlled by.
Controlled ultimately by the adepts of these societies. And this world government will supposedly partner with a new global pantheistic religion. On the surface, it'll seem inclusive, all gods welcome. But secretly, in the inner circles, the true gods being worshipped will be Satan and the fallen angels. It's presented as the ultimate reincarnation of the original Genesis 6 conspiracy happening right now.
Wow, that's a chilling scenario. What's the ultimate motive behind all this? Just power?
Power, yes, but rooted in something deeper, according to these texts. Lucifer's revenge.
Revenge for what? Being kicked out of heaven?
Partly, but specifically, jealousy over humanity. Satan, Lucifer, Iblis, was enraged when God created Adam and planned to make him Lord of the earth, a ruler, a vice-regent, basically putting humans made of dust above angels. Psalm 8, Hebrews 1 and 2 talk about this high destiny for humanity.
Angels objected to Adam's creation.
Some texts, like the Quran, depict angels questioning God. How can you put someone there on earth who will cause damage and bloodshed? There was resentment from the start. Satan's outright refusal to bow to Adam sealed his fate, leading to his expulsion. But God gave him respite, time until Judgment Day to try and deceive humanity. The Mayan Popol Vuh even has a Lucifer figure, Vuh who boasts and falls, echoing the story.
So he enacted his revenge. How?
In two main stages, according to this narrative. First, Eden. Tempting Adam and Eve with the fruit wasn't just about disobedience, it was about tempting them to seek knowledge through independence from God. This caused humanity to divorce the spirit of heaven from the physical flesh, impairing our judgment, setting us on a self-destructive path, a spiritual sabotage.
And the second revenge?
Genesis 6. Tempting the watchers, those seraphim, those fiery serpent angels, to sin with human women, creating the Nephilim, beings who were part immortal angel, part mortal human. This was a direct biological assault, a violation against God and his laws of creation, creating a counterfeit spirit on earth. Why would these high angels do it? Because they too saw Adam, made of mere dust, getting all this honor as a profound insult.
And God imprisoned those specific angels.
Yes, the ones who committed this particular violation, the impassioned violators, they were cast into gloomy dungeons, the abyss, Tartarus described in 2 Peter and Jude. And here's a fascinating point from the sources. After his resurrection, Jesus supposedly visited these imprisoned angels.
Visited them, to preach to them.
Not to save them, but to proclaim his victory and confirm their judgment. His triumph over death sealed their doom and secured humanity's path to redemption, a path higher than the angels.
What about Azazel? He gets special mention sometimes.
He does. As a chief watcher, maybe the same as Shemiyaza, his punishment was specific. Bound under jagged rocks in a desolate place called Dudale, possibly linked to Orion constellationally, until the end times when he'll be released briefly before final judgment.
Is that connected to the scapegoat ritual in Leviticus?
Directly. One goat was sacrificed for Yahweh, the other was sent out into the wilderness for Azazel, symbolically carrying away the sins, potentially the sins committed by those angels back then. Even the goat of Mendes, that common satanic symbol, is linked etymologically and symbolically to Azazel. The connection is deep.
But not all fallen angels are locked up.
Crucial distinction, yes. Only those who physically interbred with humans, violating the created order, were imprisoned in the abyss. Other unpacks and dark angels who didn't commit that specific sin are still active on earth, working deception within the accepted rules of engagement, as one source puts it. Think of the demons in the Gospels who begged Jesus not to send them to the abyss. They knew it was a place of confinement for certain fallen beings.
And demons are the Nephilim spirits, not the fallen angels themselves.
Correct, according to this framework. Fallen angels are rebel spiritual beings. Demons are the disembodied, immortal spirits of their dead giant offspring, trapped on earth and full of malice towards the humans they blame for their condition. That's why they're so focused on tormenting humanity.
So what's humanity's ultimate destiny in all this cosmic drama?
To rise higher than the angels. The sources argue that through Jesus, humankind is destined for a position of authority above the angelic realm. This whole rebellion, this 6,000-year saga, is essentially a proving ground. Will Lucifer's way of rebellion and self-deification be allowed to dominate, or will God's plan for humanity prevail?
And the goal of the fallen angels and demons is just to stop that.
To stop as many individual humans, saints, as possible from reaching that destiny, from achieving salvation and taking their ordained place. It's a battle for souls, driven by ancient jealousy and a desire to thwart God's ultimate purpose for creation.
Which makes Jesus' visit to the abyss even more significant.
Exactly. Yeah. It was the ultimate declaration that their rebellion had failed, that humanity's path to ascendancy was secured through him, and that their end was certain.
Wow. What a journey we've taken, really. Started with just one cryptic verse in Genesis.
And ended up mapping out this vast ancient conspiracy. The Nephilim as demigods, the Watchers' rebellion, the corruption of sacred knowledge.
Yeah, the split between pure and spurious sciences, Enoch, the evil, the secret societies carrying it forward. It's a lot.
The antediluvian tyranny, the blood drinking, the flood as a direct consequence, and then the idea that it didn't even end there.
Right, the continuation through Nimrod, Babel, the spread through paganism leading right up to today's secret societies and New Age movements, all supposedly part of this millennia-long plan.
Driven by Lucifer's revenge against humanity's destiny. It really is an epic hidden history, if you follow these sources, a cosmic battle playing out behind the scenes.
It definitely gives you a different lens to view the world through, doesn't it?
It certainly does. A hidden history, a cosmic drama, and a fight for our very souls, potentially.
So the final question for you listening. If these hidden histories, these ancient patterns are really unfolding, how might recognizing them, even just considering them, change your understanding of the world around you? Maybe even change the choices you make every day.
It's definitely something to think about. We encourage you to explore these texts, these ideas, for yourself. Dig deeper, question, consider. The truth, whatever it may be, is often stranger and maybe more profound than we imagine.